The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame. Turn your memorabilia into a work of art.
This is The Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates, and by Renewal by Andersen, with your host, John Pennington.
Good warm Sunday morning to you. Pleased to have you joining us here on the Sports Source, presented by Renewal by Andersen today. We have 20-plus topics on Tennessee and the SEC to cover. That's a lot, so let's just get right into today's show. First segment, as I mentioned, brought to you by Renewal by Andersen. Right now, the window of opportunity, get it? It's open at rbaknoxville.com. Save 15% on windows and patio doors. 15% on windows or patio doors with installation included. Schedule it by June 30th, and there's no money down, no interest, no payments for a full year. 15% off the best windows and patio doors in the United States of America. Renewal by Andersen. You can visit their website right there or give them a call right there. They are the local leaders. Nobody better than Renewal by Andersen. Here are our local leaders. Glad to have this group with us today. Bob Hodge, Ryan Callahan, Josh Ward, Mike Strange. Thanks to each and every one of you for being here. As I said, it's a packed show, so let's dive right into this thing. Kickoff times for the first 3 games of the year are set for Tennessee. Let's take a look at them right here. They open up September 1st in Charlotte, of course, against West Virginia. That's going to be on CBS at 3:30, and then the next 2 weeks, yawn, East Tennessee State, 4 o'clock on SEC Network, Texas El Paso, noon on SEC Network. It's the first time, I believe, since 2009. It's a long time since Tennessee opened with 3 straight daytime games to open the season. Gentlemen, I really don't care about the last 2 games on the Southeastern Conference Network, but when you play those neutral site games, the goal is to get exposure. It's all about the recruiting. One, you want to get into that area and take your brand. Tennessee's recruiting North Carolina. Charlotte makes sense. But the other part of that is you want eyeballs. Do you think Tennessee is disappointed that they got a 3:30 slot? You still get CBS, but it's 3:30 rather than the prime time that I think a lot of these teams are angling for. Do you think there's disappointment, or do you think they care?
I think there's disappointment, but I also think that's a pretty good time slot for a team coming off an 0-8 SEC run.
Sure.
So I think if you put that into context, it's a national game, 3:30, slight disappointment.
Beggars can't be choosers.
But you could have been relegated to 12 o'clock on ESPNU.
From a recruiting standpoint, anybody that's considering, any recruit that's out there considering Tennessee or West Virginia is going to watch it, whether it's at 3:30 or 8 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, I would also add, from a recruiting standpoint, part of it might depend on how the game goes. If Tennessee has a tough time, then Tennessee's coaches might prefer to have the evening to work the recruiting angle of how the game went. I also think about the Thursday night game against Appalachian State a few years ago. Tennessee was excited about that Thursday night national exposure, and then Tennessee itself actually ended up being exposed a little bit. So part of it depends on how does the game go before we decide what Tennessee wanted.
I think the CBS time slot's not a bad thing. I mean, it's an afternoon kickoff. Maybe you see the prime time start as the bigger game, but CBS usually draws pretty good ratings, even better than the prime time games a lot of times. So I don't think that's a bad thing for them. And I think more recruits are sitting around in the afternoon, frankly, than on Saturday nights watching games a lot of times. So I think it works, and it's not really a downside to it. I see, obviously fans might like the night game, but I think for recruiting purposes and everything you want out of the game, you get what you want with the CBS slot.
UT let it be known this week that season ticket sales are lagging a bit behind last year. They topped out at 69,000 last year. They're a little bit below that this year. What we've seen in the past, every time they've had a coaching change, the season ticket sales have not gone up. They've actually gone down because usually you're coming off a bad season. Considering you were 0-8 last year, all right, I could see where ticket sales would drop. You look at that home schedule, you could see where it would drop. At the same time, you've got a new coach, and the idea is, we should be excited about the new coach. Your thoughts on Tennessee not yet being where it was the last couple of years on season ticket sales? Are you surprised at all, or are you surprised that they're just lagging a bit behind?
I'm surprised it's not lagging further behind, frankly. There were a good amount of fans excited last year about where Tennessee was coming off that 9-win season in 2016. I think there were people optimistic they could still win 7 or 8 games at the very least. And this team, with having no expectations, I think that's pretty impressive to have season ticket sales kind of in the ballpark where they could end up around 70,000.
And I just think that home schedule is atrocious.
It's terrible.
And
Florida and
Alabama,
but
you know,
but
you got
the
Florida and
non-conference
Alabama,
is
but
terrible.
you've also got the non-conference teams that are just absolutely awful. So it would be interesting to see what plays into what. Because if you're going to shell out the money and the time to go over there and watch a football game, I mean, you want it to be something that's going to be interesting.
Right.
And if either one of the or any of the 3 non-conference home games are interesting, Tennessee's got a huge problem. So you don't want them to be interesting too much,
right?
But you also don't want to go over and watch a snoozer.
You want it to be interesting on paper before you get in there.
Yes, exactly.
You don't want interesting with this bunch. And it is getting tougher and tougher, and this is no secret. Everyone knows this, that it's getting harder to get people out of their homes to spend more money. I could sit here at home and watch on television. I watch this crummy game. I care about UT, but it's a terrible game. And I can watch 15 other games that are better around the nation. That's why you need to have better games over there. So when you look at that schedule, I'm not surprised that the tickets are lagging. Your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think Ohio State is probably, or Alabama may be having this conversation too. It's just, you're right, it's just harder to get people to come out anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, if West Virginia were at home instead of in Charlotte, maybe that would help a little bit. I mean, if you think about previous first-year coaches, 2009, Lane Kiffin had UCLA on the schedule. You had Oregon on the schedule for Derek Dooley. I think 13 they traveled with Butch Jones. But I don't know that West Virginia would make that big of a difference. But if you're trying to sell the schedule, there's not that much to sell right now.
I think if you exchange ETSU for West Virginia, you know, or you just put it home, you know, you'd have more people buying tickets.
I'm all for if you're going to play crummy games at home to play in-state teams. I have no problem with that. But what's ETSU been playing football 2 years? You know, I mean, quite honestly, that's taking it way too far, in my opinion.
Okay. And then the last one we'll talk about here, we discussed this a few weeks ago. Philip Fulmer was kind of slow playing the stadium renovation, taking a look at it, and everyone thought, well, maybe he's not going to go through with this $300+ million deal that John Curry had kind of said, yep, we're on path. Well, this week, Philip Fulmer said that the project is, quote, on track, in a good place, and UT's on task to do it. Thoughts on the renovation project? We discussed a few weeks ago that I think most of the folks here felt like don't go all out, do what you've got to do with some of the smaller stuff first, but if it's going to be a complete overhaul, if you've got stadium foundation issues, get to that. But the idea was save as much money as you can on it. Sounds like they're going full bore. Now, we'll get a new statement next week that says, no, we didn't mean full bore, we meant halfway. Your thoughts on if they are going the full 9 yards with this?
I think they're looking around still, and I think that saying that they're kind of on track, you know, can be misleading, I think, because I don't think they're ready to move forward with this right now at all. Obviously, they're not doing anything between now and the start of the season. Philip Fulmer made it clear during a couple of Big Orange Caravan stops. He told us that they're looking around. They're going to go around and look at some other stadiums again.
Yeah.
So it's back to that phase where John Curry was way past that point. So they're clearly reassessing things and trying to figure out what they want to go forward with. I'm not going to be surprised if they wipe out the on-field suites and things like that they had planned for the south end zone. There's some things they could change about the plan, so I don't think they're done just yet.
And I would go with what Ryan said. I think on track means we're on track to do the things we have to do.
Exactly.
Get those done.
On track, in a good place, on task to do it.
I can be on track
will be
with
done.
Christian Coleman and Justin Gatlin, but we can go at different paces based on what we're trying to get done.
Very good. All right, when we come back, Jonathan Kongbo puts out a tweet. Those are always interesting. How do you interpret his tweets? Darren Kirkland Jr. does an about-face. The SEC changes some rules that could benefit Tennessee. We'll discuss all of that next on the Sports Source.